forces, being in a high state of alert and vigilance, have so far neutralized 12 Harap drones at various locations.
Several hundreds came out to the streets in the capital, Islamabad.
The attack that India carried out was on unarmed civilians, while the Pakistani army destroyed their military installations and aircrafts.
Palpable anger, but there's also concern that the situation could escalate even further. People in border towns and cities have been told to turn off their lights at night, and some have been evacuated, as Pakistan is adamant that it reserves the right to respond after India killed its citizens. And the escalating tensions are having an impact on tens of thousands of people. Flights at major airports, including Karachi, Lahore and Sialkot, were temporarily suspended. Pakistan says it cannot ignore an infringement of its integrity and sovereignty, and politicians want world powers to reign in India.
Pakistan does not seek war. We've never pursued the path to conflict, but India is making it very difficult. And they're once again threatening the peace and stability in all of South Asia. I do call on the international community to play their role, because this is not just a bilateral issue, this is a global issue. It's a potential global crisis between two nuclear-armed neighbors.
As more people are killed and bodies laid to rest, grief and anger are fanning the flames at one of the world's most dangerous nuclear flashpoints. Osama bin Javed, Al Jazeera, Islamabad.
Now, cardinals at the Vatican have elected a new pope after a two-day conclave. Leo XIV is the first pontiff from the United States. He now leads 1.4 billion Roman Catholics from across the world. Tens of thousands watched him make his first appearance from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. Jonah Hull reports now from the Vatican.
The blessings of a new pope.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
The man once known as Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost from Chicago, now hailed from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica as Pope Leo XIV.
We want a church which always looks for peace, always looks for charity, always looks to be close, especially to those who suffer.
Well, people in this square and around the Catholic world have caught their first glimpse of the new Pope. They've heard his first words, an American Pope. Not many here would have predicted that, but this is about faith, and faith they have. Habemus Papam! An American Pope, did you see that coming?
Never. I could have never thought that. I mean, I think we were speculating Italian or even from the Philippines, but...
There's never been an American Pope. It's a big moment, right?
Yeah, it was definitely unexpected.
His chosen papal name, Leo, suggests strength in crisis. And while his moderate liberal views align with the progressive ideals of Pope Francis, an expert knowledge of church law will have appealed to traditionalists, the qualities then of a bridge builder across a divided church.
You're emotional, you're excited.
Yes, very, very excited. And, we need the union. We need to be together.
And it came after a conclave of cardinals that reached a decision in near record time, just 4 votes in 24 hours.
Many in the crowd had given up hope of white smoke this afternoon, and then suddenly it happened. The white smoke still hanging in the sky over there, the bells tolling across St. Peter's Square, the crowd jubilant.
So happy that we got to see the white smoke. Huge historical moment for the world and for Catholicism. It's wonderful.
A global congregation delighted, and not least because at 69 the new Pope is also a relatively young Pope, the age of Leo XIV promising the stability of longevity in turbulent times. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera at the Vatican.
Well, as you can see, the choice of an American-born Pope has surprised many, including people in his hometown of Chicago. Patty Calhoun has more.
Bells heralded the news at Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago, and children cheered.
I think he's going to be a wonderful Pope. He's going to do the best he can to lead the Catholic Church.
A bit shocked, but also a lot of optimism from U.S. Catholics.
I think the new Pope should continue, promoting the peace and trying to bring countries together.
It's incredible just to think about it. I mean, I think nobody really expected it to be an American, and so it's just really, really beautiful.
That sentiment even applied to the U.S. president.
We're a little bit surprised, very happy. It's just a absolutely great honor.
But in social media posts as cardinal, the new pope criticized the administration's policies on immigration, telling the vice president that he was wrong about the teachings of Jesus. Experts expect that stance on many issues will continue.
The Vatican invented diplomacy, so they're going to be very subtle, far more subtle, I think, than anyone in the current administration in the United States can be. So they will be subtle and wise, I assume. But I think they will also be strong on the issues that were mentioned: climate change, migration, immigration, worker justice, and so forth.
There are many questions about how he will deal with pressing issues like the sex abuse scandals involving priests, the role of women in the church, the treatment of LGBTQ people. But one thing seems certain: as the curtain parted and an American walked out, this was a scene many U.S. Catholics doubted they would actually see in their lifetime. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, Pope Leo XIV is a dual citizen of both the United States and Peru, where he first served as a missionary and then as a bishop. Our Latin America editor, Lucia Newman, has the regional reaction for us from the Chilean capital.
Pope Leo XIV may have been born in the United States, but he was ordained when he was 28 years old, and from then on he spent most of his life abroad, in fact in Peru to be exact. He started off as a parish priest, and from then on he became a teacher, spent much of his time in the poorest parts of that country until finally in 2013 he was named Archbishop of Chiclayo. Chiclayo is a part of the country that is extraordinarily poor, very, very high unemployment, terrible infrastructure, very representative of the poverty that is so spread out throughout Latin America and especially Peru. He speaks perfect Spanish and Italian, by the way. I was listening to his accent. And he decided 10 years ago to become a citizen of Peru as well. That goes to that shows just how close he feels to Latin America. And he was named by the former Pope Francis to head the Latin American Commission of the Pontificate of Latin America, which is the most Catholic region in the world, and that is very, very significant. So he's going to maintain a very, very close relationship with Latin America, even though he is from the United States. On a lighter note, he is going to miss Peru, he says, because since he went to the Vatican in 2023, he hasn't been able to do one of his favorite activities, which is to play tennis, which he did so much when he was still in Peru as the Archbishop. Now, clearly, as Pope, he's going to have to continue to make that sacrifice. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Santiago, Chile.
Well, let's bring in Rodolfo Soriano Nunez. He's the author of the Spanish-language books Religion and Democracy in Latin America and In the Name of God, Religion and Democracy in Mexico. He joins us now from Mexico City. Rodolfo, I saw even from the Vatican balcony today, he switched from Italian to Spanish. And Pope Leo is arguably more Peruvian, more Latin American than he is American.
Yes, and his Italian is a heavily Spanish kind of Italian, yes. Yes, all his pronunciation of Italian is Spanish, yes.
How is he being received in the region? I see many people are obviously very happy to have another American pope, a Latin American pope from, well, that's how the Vatican is also styling it, a pope from the Americas.
Yes, he is as close as Francis it could be without being yet another Argentine pope, which was kind of impossible at this point. But he is very close. He was made a bishop, not an archbishop, but a bishop by Francis. He was made a cardinal by Francis. He was appointed to his curial positions by Francis. So all his career comes from Francis, no? And yes, as Lucia Newman said, Chiclayo is one of the poorest areas in Peru, no? So he knows quite well the region, and he is well aware that protection from the state does not guarantee anything. The church and the state in Peru have a very close relation. The Catholic Church in Peru is established church. Think of the Church of England in the United Kingdom and you get the picture. So it's kind of an oddity for Latin America where most of the countries are now separated, but they kept that there. And he's well aware of how dangerous is that kind of relationship. He was the target of a campaign from the far right Catholic outlets, EWTN and The Pillar, an associate of EWTN, or close at least, because they are going to sue me for saying that they are associate, but they are close in any case. And they blame him for covering up for a priest accused of sexual abuse. He was actually one of the few bishops in Peru who actually did something to address the issue of clergy sexual abuse. But the main problem is that justice in Latin America is very slow. It's very hard to prove sexual abuse. It's very hard to go after the predators. It's very hard to get some kind of reparation. So he is well aware, and he was already the victim of those kinds of campaigns. And
Rodolfo,
he knows,
clearly this is going to be an ongoing issue for the Catholic Church and for this Pope. I'm curious, though, in terms of the relationship, you touched on it a little bit there, between religion and politics. Obviously, as we've been reporting, this new Pope is not shy when it comes to criticizing politicians, much in the same way as Pope Francis. He's spoken out already against US Vice President J.D. Vance. I see also criticized the Peruvian President, Dina Boluarte's government. Should we expect more of that, or is he going to tone things down now that he's in this position?
As a Pope, he cannot do that. He was, let's say, Francis was very careful when dealing with Argentine presidents. John Paul II was very careful with dealing with Polish leaders. And the same can be said of Benedict XVI. So he is going to tone down, but at the same time, the other bishops are well aware of how far he has gone in criticizing Vance or in criticizing Mrs. Boluarte. So they cannot claim that he was a shy bishop when addressing those kind of issues. They know how far he's willing to go. He cannot go there as a pope because popes need to be above all else a diplomat. So as a diplomat, you have to be very careful of what you say and when you say it. But he can talk with his deeds also. Just take into consideration how when Vance came around with this idiocy of the Ordo Amoris, according to Vance, Pope Francis said, no way, man. That is not how St. Augustine wrote about Ordo Amoris, no? And in that respect,
it's certainly going to be very interesting.
It's an Augustinian.
Interesting times ahead. Rodolfo Soriano Nunez there, the author of several Spanish-language books on religion and democracy in Latin America. Thank you so much for joining us on Al Jazeera.
Yes, you're welcome.
Well, US President Donald Trump is calling for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. He's posted on social media saying, hopefully an acceptable ceasefire will be observed and both countries will be held accountable for respecting the sanctity of these direct negotiations. If the ceasefire is not respected, the US and its partners will impose further sanctions. Well, for more, let's speak to Alan Fisher. He joins me now from Washington, D.C. Alan, this is not the first time Trump has called for a ceasefire. Talk us through what we know about the situation right now.
Well, look, there's a sense in Washington that Donald Trump is getting frustrated with this. In an interview that Joe Biden gave in the last 24 hours. He said he didn't understand what Donald Trump was doing with Ukraine. It's clear that Donald Trump would like to see a ceasefire. He'd like it to be extended, and he wants it to be all-encompassing. But he said that before. You go back to March the 18th, and he believed he had a deal. He'd spoken to Volodymyr Zelensky. Volodymyr Zelensky said, yep, we're on board. And then Donald Trump said he would be speaking to Putin, and he believed that Vladimir Putin would agree from the Russian side. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. They didn't deliver. All through this process, Donald Trump has tried to get both sides to agree to a cessation in fighting. Of course, you've got to remember that during the election campaign, he promised that he would have the war over within 24 hours of winning the election, not even getting into the Oval Office. But he's finding out that it's a much harder prospect. He's also threatened both sides with sanctions, and there was a feeling that he was more frustrated with the Ukrainians than with the Russians. And then about 10 days ago, he tweeted out saying that Vladimir Putin had to stop the fighting now. And we heard from J.D. Vance in the last 24 hours, who suggested that perhaps the Russians were asking for too much. And there has been that suggestion that when the 30-day ceasefire was proposed and the Ukrainians said, yeah, we're on board, the Russians said, yeah, we could probably get along with this, but we want a few other things. That was totally unacceptable to the Ukrainians and their allies. So now he's saying, look, something has got to be done or we're going to put sanctions in place. He's threatened this before. He has absolutely threatened this before, but didn't follow through. Now it appears that they're about to walk away. You'll remember that Marco Rubio said just over 2 weeks ago that next week would be an important week for the US position on this. It looks as if their frustration is beginning to show more often, and unless they can see some significant movement, the United States are about to walk away, even though Donald Trump would ideally like to be able to deliver something he's promised for so long.
Alan Fisher there across those developments for us from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Alan. Well, still ahead here on Al Jazeera. A strategic friendship facing new challenges. The Chinese and Russian leaders meet in Moscow amid shifting international alliances.
The heavy rain of late from big thunderstorms in Texas is still there, but it's along the Gulf Coast now, stretching through Louisiana towards Florida. And Florida might be the next place to watch, at least come the weekend. It does creep up to the eastern states of the US, so New York's only about 15 degrees in the rain. Elsewhere, it's looking pretty fine at the moment. There is still cold enough weather to give a bit of now at the highest ground in Colorado, for example, but we can more or less forget that by Saturday. That's where the rain shows itself as focusing in the panhandle of Florida. The rest of the US, much drier, quite windy, I think, for a time in the middle of Canada. And eventually that'll be quite a strong breeze running down towards North Dakota. But currently it's a warm southerly drift. Bismarck, 31 degrees. Now, throughout the Caribbean, the showers are much lighter now. There's a focus of rain maybe in Panama and crossing in towards Colombia. And this massive showers coming down through Mexico towards the Yucatan Peninsula by late in the day, I think, on Saturday because of a breeze out of Texas and across the Gulf. In South America, once again, you've got to watch the size of the showers just in the north of Uruguay, the southeast of Brazil and in Paraguay. That will cause some flooding.
again, you're watching Al Jazeera. Let's remind you of our top stories this hour. There are reports of heavy shelling in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. India and Pakistan are accusing each other of killing civilians in a second day of hostilities and are promising retaliation against each other. Cardinals at the Vatican have elected US Cardinal Robert Prevost as Pope. The new leader of the Roman Catholic Church will be known as Leo XIV. He is the first pontiff from the United States. US President Donald Trump is calling for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. He says if the ceasefire is not followed, the US and its partners will impose further sanctions. Several Israeli soldiers have been injured in an explosion in Rafah in southern Gaza. Israeli helicopters were seen arriving at the scene. The blast caused a building to collapse. The armed wing of Hamas says its fighters were engaged in intense fighting with Israeli forces. Well, meanwhile, Israeli army attacks have killed at least 28 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip on Thursday. One of the strikes killed a man and his 2-year-old son in Deir al-Balah. Another attack in northern Gaza killed at least 9 members of one family. Tarek Abu Azoum has more from Deir al-Balah in Gaza.